it's when you model it probabilistically across all of our minds, there's an equation, a mathematical pattern, that it's not independent. And that when you add them all up together, all of the things that are in our brains and our thoughts, and then you look at the relationship with what's happening in physical reality, there's a pattern, like
some kind of relationship.
There's an equilibrium. So the amount of things that change in our minds
changes just as much in the physical world.
Just as much in the physical world, but not necessarily proportionally. Probabilistically, and it can happen anywhere around us.
Yeah.
So I
kind of know what you mean. There's this thing. I'm a big sci-fi fan, but it comes into a few of the sci-fi novels and classics where humans can achieve whatever we know is possible to achieve. So a lot of these great technological advances happen because we know they're possible, and then we chase them down till they occur. So is that kind of like we're talking about? Like once we think about something, if you think about it and everybody thinks about it enough, it will manifest itself in some way.
Yeah, I have two ways of saying that, of thinking about. Okay, so you've heard of the idea, like when something's invented, it's invented in many places at the same time.
Yeah,
you heard of that?
Like the idea is just coming to the human collective thinking.
Exactly. Yeah. So you reach these critical points, these critical masses or events, and then it happens. So that's one way of looking at it. That there is that machine, and then we're all adding to it, and all of a sudden it breaks, and then a bunch of us start reflecting that materialization. See, like you said, we all think about it, we're all adding to it, and all of a sudden that mass gets big enough, and then it has to balance itself with the physical world. Right. So then somebody invents something.
So then it actually manifests. It turns
through
into something.
Somebody.
Yeah.
And somebody does something.
It comes into being.
And then it comes into being.
Yeah.
So that's let's say we look at something like a Google, okay? Something like a massive thing, like a brand, any brand.
Yeah.
Starbucks or Apple. And the size at which, imagine how big the relationships with Apple, let's take Apple. Okay, the amount of employees they have, the technology they're working on, the countries that they work through, the amount of people, the user base.
Yeah.
I mean, all the apps that they build, that the other people build in their ecosystem. It's just massive numbers of lines and circles. So if you just looked at what the size of this Apple circle must be, let's say it's, who knows what the number is.
Yeah, quantifying the human input. The amount of human thought.
The amount of human thought that's gone into Apple.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The amount of human thought that's gone in from the beginning until now, and that sustains it.
Yeah.
And so this thing is, let's say, is like 1 million. Okay, that's the value, is 1 million.
Sure.
Okay? So what happens is that in reality, that value in this abstract space is 1 million. So therefore, there must be a reflective amount. The reality must reflect that value in terms of the things that we see around us that come about, that are related to Apple. So we all have Apple phones, right? Phone. Okay, so you can start counting the amount of things like laptop, phone.
In your immediate vicinity.
Even a logo, immediate vicinity.
Yeah.
Logo, maybe just I have a sticker on my bike, on my thing, Apple sticker.
Yeah.
It could be anything, like people that work for Apple that are, if you're working for Apple.
Just a reference to it.
A reference, that's it. So that's how it works. So you have these giant masses, and then all around us, our relationships to those things then produce a probability of those things being in our immediate vicinity. So I can count the amount of things that are related to Apple. So let's say the value is 1 million, and then I have a certain relationship with Apple. Therefore, I should have 8 things around me at any given time that relate to Apple.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't even know what they are. Sometimes people will be walking down the street and they work for Apple, but you don't know it. But that was one of the things. Or somebody drove by and they had an Apple logo.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things, but you didn't notice it. But
it's there.
But it was there. It was there.
Yeah.
And a MacBook here, and it's not yours. It has nothing to do, but it's these bubbles that we create, and then things are reflected within them. So what will happen is that's why you get these coincidences where people come. it's often where people are like, oh, I was just thinking about this, da 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 da, is because there is a rule of probability, in my opinion, that must reflect the abstract space. There's a probability to it, and then it appears here.
Yeah,
so it's kind of like,
I get this. Yeah.
So it's like a holographic reflection situation.
Yeah. Oh, this is complex, but I'm beginning to get a feel for what you mean.
Okay, so you can, yes. So, like, let's say you even wanted to calculate, like, the success of a business, you know? You would calculate the amount of relationships that business has, and you have to have weights. It's not easy.
Sure.
This is stuff for computers. This is
yeah,
stuff for AI.
This
is very high-end.
Yeah.
Like, this is not possible to do.
Sit down with a pen and
No,
paper.
no. That's why we're doing it now. That's what we're talking about now. Because we have this stuff. And the thing is that you could start, but you don't necessarily, I don't think you have to calculate all of them, just a certain amount to get a certain, you know, approximation where you're like, I'm 80% sure we're going to get this number. And then you start getting to these high things, and you don't necessarily need to calculate 100% to get to, you know, like, you need to calculate a certain amount, and then you could get a decent value. And then what you could start doing is maybe knowing, let's say you have a business and you do all this math, you could start maybe understanding how many people are going to visit you per hour.
Right.
You know, you have an idea of like how much money might flow through your business
based on the amount of people thinking about your brand. And how many through this relationship will you think will kind of how much of that brand will manifest around them?
I think that's it. I think the way you said it is that it's like the amount of people thinking about something.
Yeah.
And it's that. Yes, that's what it is. But we don't know how many people are thinking about anything.
You can that's it.
The only way to calculate it is by counting these relationships. And the way that you count the relationships is the only way to quantify. You can't ask somebody or you think about it. You can't get this. Even if you ask somebody and you're like, oh, how many times did you think about it? You're like, I don't know, like 2 times, 10 times. It doesn't matter.
They won't even be logging the subconscious stuff.
No, so you have to count the number of reflections of those people, because their thinking about it also reflects. So those people will, like, by thinking about your business, will have like your business card on their table.
Right.
So you'd have to count their business card. You'd be like, okay, see, your business card is there. That's a relationship. That's a connection. Yeah. There's 1 connection, 2 connections. And you'd have to do that. You know, it's complicated. But with the internet,
would be astronomical.
Yeah, but with the fact that everything's being digitized now.
So we've got the data, we've got the logs.
Exactly. Because of the logs, you can start counting the amount of times people mention things. And it's already being done. In marketing, this is being done. But there's no theory for it. Like, there's no theory that's like saying, okay, so if we count this, there's a probability for this. And it's because there's these abstract spaces.
So why do
creating
people do what they
relationships.
do? You know?